So if you've ever considered living in Charleston, South Carolina, these are the pros and the cons that you absolutely need to know. Welcome back, everybody. As always, I am Bill Olson, your favorite YouTubing Charleston realtor, and today we're talking about the pros and cons of living in the greater Charleston area. And we're gonna get right started with the pros, and it's actually the number one pro is the reason why we're filming where we are today, and that is because of the weather, specifically the mild winters. Now we're filming this video towards the end of February. It is 80 degrees outside and I am wearing shorts and a polo shirt. So that to me is the number one reason why you should consider Charleston. Now, and it's not just because of today. All week has been in about the 70s. We get around 230 days of sunshine every year. And yes, you will hear people say that summers are extremely hot and humid, but you're in the Southeast. Just about everywhere in the Southeast, you're gonna get hot and humid summers. But I think the mild winters and the nice spring and fall do counterbalance that to make it a true pro and not a hot and humid con. Next up, we have something that does go hand in hand with that nice weather, and that is the beaches. Now, the Charleston area has 5 main beaches, and one we'll talk about that's a little bit further away, but it's a little more private. Now, of the 5 main ones going from north to south, you have Isle of Palms, Sullivan's Island, Folly Beach, Kiowa Island, and Seabrook Island. Now, of those, the first 3 are going to be fully public beaches, whereas Kiowa and Seabrook are gated communities, but Kiowa does have Beachwalker Park, which is part of the county park system here in Charleston, so that is a public park. Now, a little further south, if you want to drive and have a little more privacy, less crowded beaches, you can head down to Edisto Island, which is a small island just south of Charleston where you will see tourists there, but it's not going to be as populated as Isle of Palms, Sullivan's Island, or Folly. Sticking with the outdoor theme, we have parks and recreation. Now, the Charleston County Park System, let me tell you, is something that would make Leslie Knope proud. The Charleston County Park System currently consists of currently open and future projects. There are 33 parks in the county. Now, most of them are not free parks, so they are about $2 to get in the main parks per person, but you can buy a park pass that they call the Gold Pass for a year. If you're a Charleston County resident, it is $70 a year. If you're over 60, it is $60. Everyone else is $90 per year. And let me tell you, it is well worth the price of admission because there are beach parking lots that on the weekend are $15 to $20 to park, and that gets you in there for free with your park pass. So you can easily make up that cost and enjoy everything that Charleston has to offer year-round. And when it comes to the reasons that people move to Charleston, or really to anywhere, you have 2 main reasons. You move for pleasure or you move for work. And when it comes to work and the job force, the job market in Charleston is a big draw for people. We have a very strong job market. We actually have an unemployment rate less than that of the national average. Now, some of the main industries that we have here are aerospace, with Boeing having their big plant in North Charleston next to the airport, defense with Joint Base Charleston and the Naval Weapons Station, and soon to be open in the next few years is one of the largest Coast Guard bases will be stationed right here in Charleston. And then automotive and tech are actually really big as well, with Volvo having their Ridgeville plant, and they're soon to be building their electric vehicle, and Redwood Materials coming right across the street with electric vehicle battery recycling. Together, they're going to be adding 2,800 jobs over the next 5 to 8 years. And with that, that's also going to increase imports in the port of Charleston, so that's going to be increasing jobs there as well. And finally, on our pros, we have something that I have talked about in multiple videos of mine, but there is a reason, because it's one of the reasons people move here, and that is because of our property taxes. Now, our primary residence property taxes in South Carolina in general, not just here in Charleston, are some of the lowest in the country, actually some of the top 10 lowest property taxes in the country. On average, you pay about 0.52% of the assessed value of your home if it's your primary residence. Now, it is good to note if you're buying a secondary home or an investment property that your taxes are going to triple because of the way they assess the property. And as a primary resident, you're also exempt from school operating taxes. So you add all that together, investment properties are triple that of primary residences, but about 0.5% of your assessed value. That kind of helps a lot of people when they're making their decision of where they're going to move, especially from places like New Jersey, New York, and that Northeast. So those are some of the main pros of living in Charleston, but it's not all rainbow row and unicorns here. There are some downsides, and the biggest downside for me when I first moved here was actually the hurricanes. Now, hurricane season does run from June to November. It's extremely long, but as I've been told by a meteorologist friend of mine, that the main storms do come right around September and the few weeks before and after. But it is something to be concerned about. These storms are huge. We have evacuated a few times, and they're scary and they can do a lot of damage. But if you live a little inland, if you are worried about them, moving inland could be a good choice for you, whether it's Hanahan, Goose Creek, Somerville, if you don't want to be that close to the coast. And your insurance is actually going to be a little lower from hurricane storms as well. And then along the same lines of hurricanes, we have storms and flooding specifically. Now, flooding is probably the #1 question I get from people that are moving here, that they don't want to live in a flood zone. Real quick, everything here is in a flood zone. We're not called the Low Country for no reason, but most of the area is in Zone X. Typically, people will say they don't live in a flood zone if they live in Zone X, because flood insurance is typically not required by your mortgage if you're in Zone X. But what you do need to take into consideration, if you're above Zone X in AE, V, VE, that's where you are required to carry flood insurance. Now, just because you have flood insurance or you're in one of these higher risk flood zones doesn't mean that your house is going to get water every time it rains. There's probably a dozen or 2 dozen areas that I could tell you that the streets flood here during high tide or heavy rains, but the chances of it actually getting into homes consistently is not very common. So I wouldn't consider it a huge con for living. It's more of a con for convenience, because when these streets do flood, then you've got to reroute most of your day to get around that, and then the next day the water is down and it's just fine. And this brings us to our final con, which I think is the biggest one. It's a little tricky too, and that is the cost of living. Now, the reason why it's a little tricky is that Charleston as a whole actually only has a cost of living about 2 to 3% above the national average. However, when you compare it to the rest of the state of South Carolina, well, the whole state of South Carolina has a cost of living well below the national average, which puts Charleston as one of the most expensive places to live in the entire state. And one of the biggest pieces of the cost of living, of course, is housing and housing expenses. Now, the average cost of a home in the greater Charleston area has gone up $100,000 over the past 3 years. Now, that's a greater Charleston area. If we look at just the city of Charleston, it has gone up $150,000 in 3 years, which is an insane appreciation. But what you can do is look a little outside of Charleston, especially north into Hanahan, Goose Creek, Somerville, Ladson, where you're going to find housing costs significantly lower than the city of Charleston. But know that there are pockets up there like Nexton in Somerville where your average price is $500,000-$600,000. So it is well over the median price of actual Somerville. You're paying again for that convenience to live there. And while the property taxes do help offset these rising home prices just a little bit, the sales tax in the city of Charleston is 9%. And if you're going out to eat, be prepared to pay another 2% food and beverage tax on top of that. Now, in other housing costs, you have your utilities. Now, we're not the cheapest state. We're not the most expensive state. We're actually ranked about 25th in utility costs. So we're about average on that. So you're not really saving any money there. And then when it comes to transportation, we have extremely cheap gas, but I think that is offset by some of the highest insurance rates in the country. So what did I miss? I know there's some pros and some cons that I missed. Let us know down in the comments which ones of these you find the most interesting and what I miss. I really want to know what I miss. I can put another video together with everything that you tell me. And as always, if you're looking to sell or buy anywhere in the greater Charleston area, I would love to be your realtor of choice. All my contact is down below. Check out this video right here because I think you're really gonna like it, and I will see you on the next video. City of Charleston, there are other areas, some that are more expensive. Like that bird is probably really loud in this mic, isn't it? Okay. You're gonna add another airplane going over